In the first of Coming Together Awards, I'd like to recognise some special Victorian Freemasons, and there'll be plenty of time at the end of the proceedings for us all to have an informal chat together. I'd like to welcome Right Worshipful Brother Wayne Smith, past Junior Grand Warden, who's the Grand Scribe Ezra of Grand Chapter, the Grand Secretary of Grand Market, of course the Grand Scribe of the Ancient and Honourable Fraternity of Royal Ark Mariners, to offer a prayer of thanks. Thank you,
brethren, let us pray. Great Architect and Overseer, Creator of all things, the great I Am, we offer to you thanks for this land, our land, Australia, as we celebrate her National Day. Let us give thanks to those who came before and made our country what it is, yet ever remembering only too well all that it is not. Yet fill us with a hope for brighter prospects of what it can be. Bless our Sovereign, the Queen, and all who are set in authority under her. May our state and federal parliaments bring forth wisdom and great understanding in all their deliberations. May our courts of law dispense justice in full measure. May the land continue to yield forth the bounty of the harvest and all that is needful. Fill the hearts of those who serve in our military forces, emergency services, and in our hospitals with fortitude and courage. Teach every citizen respect one for the other, tolerance and diversity, honour, integrity, love, and compassion for all. We thank you for the freedom we enjoy in this free land, where rule from the barrel of a gun nor the oppressor of a dictator is not countenanced, and all may live in peace, prosperity, and dignity. Bless us, supreme and incomprehensible, our great fraternity, and teach us in word and deed to practice outside the lodge room those great principles we learn within it. We offer thee thanks that we are one land, one people, from shore to shore, undivided. May thy grace continue to lead us in the right paths and give us wisdom and understanding, and so fill us with joy that with one consent of tongue and heart we may say proudly, I am proud to be an Australian. All this in thy name, O Lord.
So mote it be.
Mote it be.
you ever considered being a Grand Chaplain? It's very thoughtful. I'm not going to recognise the Australia Day honoree, and I've seen the announcement. In fact, I was given a bit of a heads up on at least 4 recipients that are connected to the Freemasons Victoria. The annual lesson is that there are usually many more than we first thought who are connected with the Freemasons Victoria family. So it's quite possible that we've missed some, because when I looked at the CVs that were published, I only recognised that really those ones who mentioned as part of their notes that they were associated with Freemasonry.
Adjustment here. The last over and a half.
Note from Graham Berry, Ash. I don't know whether you have. That there's a lot of brethren trying to get online, and he thinks the meeting might only be set for 100. Is that correct?
I don't know, and I'm trying to do my best. If any brother's got an idea of how we can adjust that maximum, I've gone to to another computer to try and adjust that, but I can't find a link to provide entrance to more than 100.
Okay, so we're trying. Yeah. Named in the Order of Australia recipients today were Peter Thomas Gurr, who's been awarded with a medal of the Order of Australia, a first grade principal of the Supreme Grand Chapter of Royal Archmasons of Victoria. Lord Theodore Hable, member of Grange Lodge since 1959.
One from
Vernon Hall,
one for 19 after 3.
and George and American Rogers. I know that Ash posted on, I think it was Facebook, a short video about some of the recipients. Are you going to show that now, or is it still available on social media, Ash?
Available on social media, also at the fvnews.com website.
To these groups I've just named, and to all others who are yet to learn, there may well be a number amongst the, for example, medal or emergency service medal that we haven't recognised. We extend the hearty good wishes on the honour they've not only brought to themselves, but brought to the country. Promoted to the Victoria is Brother Philip Mayers. Significant service through a range of organisations. His other involvements included senior roles in Rotary, Make-A-Wish International, Steps to Sale, the Royal District Nursing Service and Jewish Care. He was a leader of the Victorian Union for Progressive Judaism, the Executive Council of the Australian Jury, and the Jewish Community Council of Victoria. Tonight, Brother Philip Mayers joins us, and we extend to you, Philip, heartiest congratulations. Are you there?
Thank you so much, Most Worshipful Grandmaster. I'm here, but I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Well, that's right. That's all. We know what we look like.
Yeah.
One obvious question.
Yes.
Unlike many of us online tonight, you chose to be in Australia.
Yes, I did.
So I detect a bit of a Southern African accent. Is that correct?
Indeed, from Johannesburg.
So how many years have you actually been in Australia?
I've been here for nearly 34 years.
Right.
And the only regret I have is that I didn't come 20 years earlier.
Right. And so how difficult was the transition, the relocation from South Africa to Australia? I presume you came direct to Victoria?
Yes, that's a very good question, because on the surface it would appear to be easy. We speak the same language, kind of. We play the same sports, same seasons. But coming to any new community, even for a regular Australian moving from Tasmania to Queensland, it's going to be changes. However,
Ash Long speaking, may I help you?
Yeah. Who's that? Are you there, Pete? Are you there?
I'm here, Philip.
Wonderful.
John, at the moment we're at a capacity of 100. We're trying to find a way to increase that capacity. Please bear with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Ash. Yeah, but getting back to that, one of the most amazing things was my wife Rona and our two sons, we came here, we were strangers, but the Melbourne community was so embracing and welcoming that whatever fears we might have had soon disappeared. One of the closest friends I had in the very beginning was a former Grand Master of the Mark, Frank Slutskin.
Yep.
He's now passed on, but Frank welcomed us, took us into his home, and it was just wonderful. So in answer to your question, at first we thought it might be daunting, but it was absolutely wonderful.
So what was the really the method of entree to all of these activities? Was it through your religion? Was it through your work? Was it through sort of charity? What were those?
A bit of each, actually. It was a. Can you hold on? Can you hold on? Can you turn it on? Sorry, we've had guests all day today, and my lovely wife Rona's trying to clean up the kitchen. Back in South Africa, I'd been involved in a number of committees. I was chairman of my local synagogue, and my very first job in Australia was as chairman of was as chief executive of Jewish Care.
Right.
And both of those experiences, both in my personal life and in my job as CEO, brought me into contact with a lot of communal organizations. And because I'd been involved in committee work, if they needed help, I knew how to do it, and I put up my hand, and people were so welcoming, and that was the start of it. I became chairman of my synagogue, Temple Beth Israel, where Rabbi John Levi, who's very well known, is the rabbi, Rabbi John Levi. Also, the late Henry Nathan was a member of the congregation. And so I got to meet some wonderful people. And also the Jewish Care, Montefiore Homes, had a close working relationship with the Royal District Nursing Service. And we had some joint ventures, and they asked me to come onto their board. And that was a wonderful 15-year relationship. So the one led on to the next, and I've got to meet some great people working for really great community causes.
How did you find time to do
I
it?
beg your pardon?
How did you find the time for it?
How did I find time?
Hmm.
Well, I've got a wonderful wife, and Rona has given me that space. And I think the organizations that I became involved with, I couldn't get involved with an organization that really didn't appeal to me. So if it were to be, for example, just to make it up, underwater baseball, wouldn't have been appealing to me. But who could not want to be part of RDNS or Make-A-Wish Foundation? And the passion enabled me to find the time. There were many late hours, many weekends, but it was there, and I found the time. It's like Freemasonry. Sometimes we come home tired from work and we'd really like to put our feet up, but we hear the call, we know it's there, and when we come back at the end of the night, always, even if I'm tired and I go to lodge, I'll come back and I'll say to Rona, oh, you know, I didn't want to go at first, but when I came back, I'm just so happy that we did this, that, and the other, and saw my friends. So it's the passion.
How important has Freemasonry been to you, Philip?
Very important, and I'm glad you asked that. There'd been a generational gap in Freemasonry in my family. The last Freemasons before in my direct line was my mother's grandfather and my father's father. So I had a great-grandfather on the one side, a grandfather on the other, and my father had missed out. So there'd been a gap. And when I was running Jewish Care, one of our keenest volunteers was a very fine gentleman called Harvey Shaw. You might remember Harvey. And also another volunteer was Nathan Maller, and of course Henry Nathan. And they said to me, Philip, have you ever thought about Freemasonry? And I told them about the family connection. They asked me what I thought about it, and I said, well, my mother always spoke well of Freemasons, and I've admired them. So that's when they invited me to come in, and I've never regretted it, 33 years later.
Obvious question, brother. Why did you not choose to go through the chair?
I probably would have, but I became so involved with my other organizations that I didn't have the time. I only had time perhaps for 2 wives, for my wife and for my other committees. I retained my membership and I was a good supporter of my lodge, but I didn't have the time to invest in going through the chair. I do regret it, and I wish that I had. but there were more pressing things in terms of my other responsibilities. I was deputy chair at RDNS, chairman of Make-A-Wish. Those were full-time volunteer jobs.
Yep. I notice you have been promoted from, I think, OAM to AM.
Yeah,
How significant is that?
wow. It is the word is significant because if you're an AM, it recognizes your significant contribution and the breadth of your organizations. Interestingly, about a year or two ago, I was awarded the OMM by Freemasons Victoria. And that meant as much to me as my AM. It would have been about early last year before the lockdown. And that meant a great deal to me, that even though I hadn't been through the chair, I was still being recognized by my peers.
And that's excellent. Excellent you view it that way, Philip.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations from all those present and from all the brethren in Freemasonry for your significant
Thank you.
service to the organisation in many capacities and for the significant honour that's been rendered to you in your award of a member of the Order of Australia. Thanks very much, Philip.
Thank you so much, Most Worshipful Grand Master, and thank you so much, brethren. It's an honour to be with you tonight.
If we were here physically, I'd be asking the members to join me in the Ragged 13. That would be too. Recognition of community service gives us an opportunity not only to look back, also to look forward. The next speaker is very worshipful brother, Lieutenant Colonel David Waugh. He has spent a lifetime in preparing young people for life's challenges. His professional work saw him as an assistant headmaster at Ivanhoe Grammar School. You'd be familiar with that place, would you not, Wayne? But he also had a parallel career, as well as holding pastoral care positions for a long time. His other work was with the Australian Army Reserve, holding 3 commands: officer in charge of the Cadet Training Unit, commanding officer of the Melbourne University Regiment, and commanding officer of Army Cadets Australia. So I invite very worshipful brother, Lieutenant Colonel David Waugh, Reserve Forces Decoration, past Grand Inspector of Workings, to address us on the subject, what the candidate of 2021 might expect of Freemasonry. Thank you, David.
Thanks, Grandmaster Richard, for your very kind introduction. Brethren, over the last 2 weeks, I've been up at Puckapunyal with the Australian Army Cadet promotion courses. We had 200 or so odd 16 and 17-year-olds, and these courses were to prepare them for leadership roles. And clearly these young people too are the leaders of their generation. And I've been working with these courses now since 1975. Now, what struck me this year when talking to them, and particularly this COVID period, how keen and positive they were about the future. 2020 was tough for them. They were isolated physically from their peers. They used Zoom to communicate, and many personal milestones were missed. But they also expressed the fact that this time was used for personal reflection. What was important to them in their young lives, family, interpersonal relationships. And what I found really interesting was that in the future, they hoped they could contribute to society, and above all, they expressed the wish to be good people with a moral and social conscience. As part of this, they also explained that in their world, the issues of acceptance of diversity and tolerance and dealing with each other in a respectful way were the ways they wanted society to be. On these courses, we had a variety of religions, Christian, Hindu, Muslim and Buddhist, very much a reflection of the current diversity in our community at large under 40. As well as the spiritual diversity, the course also reflected the sexual diversity with a number of LGBTI members, again reflecting that diverse nature of our society. And finally, they were demographically very diverse. One cadet lived in Kew, father was a senior Melbourne surgeon. Another cadet lived on the Murray in a single parent family and whose mother has been on job seeker since March. The important thing was that despite these tremendous diversity of the group, they were respectful of one another. They accepted that modern life celebrates this diversity and uses it in a positive way. Brethren, we met each other on the level. And supporting the courses were a number of Army chaplains, padres to those of you with a service background, and they conducted a number of workshops for these future leaders, concentrating on the development of healthy relations within the cadet groups they would be responsible for. And the final thing the cadets told me of their COVID experience was that it helped forge their priorities of life. The essence of being human, what it is to be a good person committed to making their community better. Brethren, surely the hopes and commitments of these young people are identical to what the craft is going through at the moment. Remember too that these young people are potential candidates in the next few years. Brethren, now is the time to reset where we were going, to put a line in the sand re the past, to refocus on what is important to our members of the craft, to allow our Freemasonry to make us really better men, and to show to the country by our actions what good men do. Personally, Freemasonry has been a big part in my life, joining as a Lewis in 1974. And professionally, my entire working life has been involved in the education of the young. I've seen teaching as a vocation, and I found that the tenets of Freemasonry helped me to be a better role model for my students. I never hid the fact that I was a Freemason, and I also found that at the end of a difficult day at school, which can often happen when working with the young, that to sit in lodge and listen to the ritual and its messages for life helped me to get life into perspective and recharge those emotional batteries. Thus, I would encourage my former students who expressed an interest to explore Freemasonry. And as a result, many former students joined the school lodge I belong to. And tonight's chaplain and Brother Ashlong are some of these. Sadly, the turbulence of the last few years, I've been reticent to follow up queries re the craft because I was not sure that what we were offering matched the rhetoric and practice. Brethren, since the ethics report has been published, I've seen a light on the hill, a wonderful opportunity for us to reset where we are going, to enjoy each other's company, to be respectful of one another, no matter our background or way of life. And that by doing this, we will be seen by the young people I talked about earlier as being an organisation that should be part of their future lives, because it will make them better men. Finally, brethren, let us reflect on the ritual. For when each of us commences that final climb up Jacob's ladder, rank, wealth and fortune will fall away, and all that is left of us is our own goodness and virtue. Brethren, this is our challenge now. Back to you, Grandmaster Richard.
Thank you very much, David, for a very thoughtful and interesting address. And you're quite right, of course. The we're very conscious that our average age as an organisation is still 68. We need to make way for the younger.
This can't be a master.
We need to make way for a younger. Still getting comments coming over live. Actually, just be careful. Need to make way for younger leaders in our organisation, because those younger people, we all know, they're full of ideas, full of energy, and they're contemporaneous. In other words, this is their time when they want to make change. We've got many rising stars, and one such brother is Jake Berthelot, an entered apprentice from Lodge of the Golden Fleece. During working hours, Jake is a policy advisor with the State Treasury with a focus on Aboriginal policy. He's originally from South Australia and he moved to Melbourne from Tennant Creek. So you would have noticed a little bit of a difference.
Yes,
In the
yes, Grandmaster, I did.
To take the professional position that he's now adopted and to embrace community project work. So we do a lot of talking in Freemasons. Now's the time to listen on Australia Day to Brother Jake Berthelot. Thank you, Jake.
Thank you, Grandmaster. So, my name is Jake and I'm a Potteridge Padway man from Melbourne's premier dining and entertainment lodge. And I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands where we all virtually meet. For most of us, it will be Wurundjeri land. To many Australians, Australia Day is a day of celebration and camaraderie. And for others, including some First Nations people, it is a day of remembrance and pain. But one commonality that binds us all is the land that we now share and the relationships we have now formed. January 26, 1788 is the day that Captain Arthur Phillip landed on Australian soil with the first fleet of British ships. He raised the British flag at Sydney Cove to claim New South Wales as a British colony. But for many First Nations people, this day is recognised as Survival Day. For First Nations people, January 26 is a day of mourning, the history that followed the steps of Captain Arthur Phillip in the First Fleet. So without the acknowledge and guidance of these people, the first Australians, our country would not be the same. Today we must celebrate our rich heritage and simultaneously give our respects to the first owners of our beautiful country, acknowledging the traditional custodians of this land and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people is crucial in advancing our country and ensuring every Australian is able to celebrate this day. Despite the divide on this day, we must be proud to call this great country home. Australia is an incredible, colourful and diverse country. It has given, and will give me and any other Aboriginal Australians endless opportunities and reconciliation. Australia Day is a day to celebrate Australia's qualities and achievements as one nation, and it is also a day to rejoice in the amazing honour that we're all given to be Australian. In my eyes, an Australian is someone who loves this country. They love the land, the cultures and the ever-expanding family who inhabit it. They respect Indigenous peoples and our culture. On this country are a collection of unique climates, lush rainforests, red deserts, country towns and big cities. We have in this diverse climate some of the most amazing flora and fauna in the world, and we must recognise the amazing landscape and conserve it for our future Australians. Today, as we chucked on our Australian flag, head to the beach, cooked up some snags or played a game of cricket, we must remember the true meaning of Australia Day, and this is what Australia Day means to me. To each of you, it may mean something completely different, but that is the beauty of Australia. And as Freemasons, our ability to believe in all different things come from different cultures, different places around the world, yet together as one nation. If we continue to accept our differences and work for that strong mateship, camaraderie, inclusivity, and somewhat exclusivity as Freemasons we are so renowned for, we can create a country that all Australians, past, present, and future can be proud of. So thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Brother Jake.
Thank you, Grandmaster.
Don't mind me asking you a question.
Of course, of course.
So, as a First Nations person, what does Freemasonry offer you? I think you've almost explained it, but what does it offer you? Does it offer a place where we can all meet on the level, where we can
It's a sense of belonging and a sense of. Sorry, I'm getting a bit of feedback on mine. There's a bit of lag.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, I was just getting some feedback. For me, it's a place where I can learn from others, and it's probably the only place that encompasses so many different cultures, and we're all one. Coming from an Aboriginal background, I was fortunate enough to not only stay in touch with my community and culture, but move around Australia and work with some amazing people and learn with some amazing cultures. You know, my partner's Indian, so I heavily embrace that culture as well. And Freemasonry is somewhere that is so inclusive and respectful of everyone's culture, and everyone has such a grounded, but such a large breadth of knowledge about not only Freemasonry, but Australia as a whole. It's a place where you can feel free to speak out, but also feel free to know that your opinion is respected, sometimes challenged, but it's definitely a place where you learn. So that's what Freemasonry means to me.
That's excellent. Thank you, Jake. And best wishes with your position in government. There's a lot to be done, isn't there? Yeah, there is. I'll have some opportunities later in the meeting to, if you don't mind, Jake, for anyone else to ask you a question, because as you can see, most of us are sort of middle class Caucasians, and for many of us, I think, sort of Aboriginal policies, but the Aboriginal policy space is one we don't explore enough. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Grandmaster.
So Australia Day gives us a unique opportunity to review where a nation has been and what the journey is ahead. And Brother Jake, of course, has provided some important ingredients such as respect and tolerance as we prepare our roadmap. Soon we'll hear from Professor Stephen Duns on the change process taking place in Freemasons Victoria. We together, not we in Grand Lodge or me in the Master's office, we are going to design together what Freemasons Victoria might be like for the next 100 years. These are very exciting times, as Lieutenant Colonel David said. In the past, we often heard, still do, it's Grand Lodge is get too much in our face, making decisions for the rest of the craft, always telling us what to do. Well, last we've actually got an opportunity for every Freemason across Victoria to voice their opinion, to express their view. Professor Stephen will soon be talking to us about that change process and the workshops that are being held by Zoom. This is only the first 4 workshops. There will be many more opportunities to participate in the change process. These meetings will be held by Zoom and also face-to-face at Bayside and Eastbourne. Discussions can also take place at every lodge meeting, at every district coming together. And Professor Stephen has already received many emails and phone calls from members, and he's looking forward, quite frankly, probably hate me saying this, he's looking forward to even more. Tonight on Australia Day, I want us to be able to look briefly at Freemasonry in Australia and specifically in Victoria, because it gives us some directions about where we might journey in the future. Back in December 1939, when the Port Phillip district was new, Freemasonry quickly became part of what was to become a colony of Victoria. Lodge number 1, Australia Felix, was formed, and of course that lodge still thrives today. Now Felix, and Felix Pintado will, above all, will know that Felix is Latin for happy. Happy Pintado. What a wonderful type for a lodge to give itself. Reminds us of that final charm, to be happy and to communicate that happiness to others. I've been reminded in recent days that whilst we can take things from the past, we must constantly evolve as Freemasons. It's part of the process of converting the rough ashlar. Brethren also say they want to see a change from a focus on past mistakes and old missteps to a focus on a happy and optimistic future.
Just leave it here.
I guess I'm a naturally optimistic person.
If it rings, I can get up. I've got to get up.
But it's up to me. It's up to me and those supporting to share that optimism with you. As your Grand Master, I'm also your Grand Servant. Well, this is a membership-based organisation. Many members tell me that the new Freemasonry of 2021, as we emerge from COVID-19, could be a much happier place. We really are kinder and more caring, where there is humour and empathy, and where we really practice those qualities of brotherly love, relief, and truth. Quite frankly, it's about as simple as that. I'm confident that if we are the best type of men in society, we will have no problems at all in attracting good men as members and retaining them. I call on each of us this Australia Day to rededicate ourselves to the oaths we took and the brotherhood that we share. I'd like to recognise, this is always a difficult segment for any of these sorts of presentations, to recognise some Freemasons. And I encourage each of your lodges to also, when we heard Philip earlier talk about the OMM he received early last year, a simple award of an Order of Merit. He was thrilled by that. And I think many of our members in lodges, simply an awards like, Brother of the Year or Brother of the Month. It's more about the recognition than the tangible nature of the reward. Ian Cross, very worshipful Brother Ian Cross, has just retired as the Grand Inspector of Workings, which is a very important job in our organisation, which where we learn about brotherly love, relief and truth. It's about the ritual and the ceremonial and how it's presented. Ian has retired from that position. It's a very responsible job with the Country Fire Authority. And thank you, Ian, for the work you've done in the last, I think it's now 3 years in that position. It's a difficult job with all sorts of demands, and led and managed your ritual and ceremonial committee very well indeed. And so you go with the best of my confidence and the best wishes of all your brethren in Victoria. We had a number of brethren assist us in the Freemasons Future Recovery Team. What I might describe as the Medico members. So the Freemasons Future Recovery Team wasn't just a bunch of people with chains on sitting around the room by the nature of their rank, knowing everything. We actually had the support and input from a medical team. And you'll see one prominent feature when I mention their names and their ranks. And this group supported Right Worshipful Brother Tony Booker, the Deputy Grand Master, with expert advice in putting up the advice to you about returning from COVID-19. It was Brother Dr. Mohan Kamalanathan, Master Mason, who's an emergency physician. Brother Reece Webb, Master Mason, registered nurse. Brother Dr. Vanna Tran, Master Mason, General Practitioner. Brother Brett Drummond, Master Mason, Operational Manager with Ambulance Victoria Emergency Management Unit. Brother Mark Reynolds, Master Mason, Primary Health Care Nurse. Worshipful Brother Jason Dawson, Worshipful Master, Department of Health and Human Services, Emergency Management Branch. And heading, he's not a medico, but he's very senior, of course, in the med type area. He's very worshipful Brother Felix Pintado, Grand Chaplain. He's from Mercy Health. He's the CEO of Mercy Aged Care. And of course, we know him as the former Chief Executive of the Royal Freemasons. So thank you very much to all of those brethren who assisted us with their expert advice. And you'll notice that they're nearly all Master Masons. And one other brother would like to recognise is Alexis Rivero. He's come to Freemasons Victoria from Venezuela. A lovely place, but with its own suite of political and economic and social issues. He's a Master Mason who joined mid-year during COVID-19, and he's been a very active participant. He's given lectures about Freemasonry in his own home country, with a meet at least once a week. And there is an expectation of attending 2 to 3 gatherings every week. So I certainly do live Freemasonry over there in Venezuela 2 to 3 times a week. He's been active in Victoria, repeatedly volunteering for frontline community work and activities such as Bunnings sausage sizzles. Although I do notice these days that the sausage sizzles are a long way away from the exit. And Alexis, of course, is a member in the Northern District. So congratulations to our medical team, to Brother Alexis, and to very much for Brother Ian Cross for all the work you've done in the last, and certainly in the last 12 months. And I'd encourage, we'll provide some guidelines, but we'll encourage lodges and districts to actually provide that recognition of outstanding service and to members at lodge and district level. I want to share the spotlight tonight with, in fact, I know what you're really thinking. You think, I've spoken too much, and you're probably correct. I want to share the spotlight tonight with Professor Stephen Duns, who is our Change Management Project Manager, working with past Grand Master, Most Worshipful Brother Gary Sebo, looking at the ethics report and then guiding and facilitating our members in their response. So what are the lessons we learned from? What are the issues that we need to address to make Freemasons Victoria the best place we can be? He's very well known to many in Freemasons Victoria through his work with Leadership Victoria. Well practiced as a facilitator in involving members in change. We can't do this, we cannot do this sort of thing on our own. Restructuring organisations to be their very best. I turn the concept of happy Freemasonry to you. Let us all think about Felix. Let us all be the best versions of ourselves. Together we will achieve much. On that note, I'd like to introduce Professor Stephen Duns. Over to you, Stephen.
Thank you, Richard. It's a real pleasure to be here, and happy Australia Day to you all. I really appreciate the words that David and Jake shared. They were lovely thoughts for us to reflect on, and thank goodness for this program. I'd also like to thank all the people who made contact with me over the last few weeks. There has been quite a few of them, and it's been great to chat with them. I had dinner with Zeppelin Lodge last week, and that was a really lovely thing to do. I'm meeting with the up in Castlemaine with the district coordinators on Sunday, and so I'm really eager to get to know more of you, to get more opinions, so that as many people as possible can contribute. One of the ways of looking at change is to think of it as, are we moving away from something, or are we moving towards something? There's a lovely story about Oprah Winfrey, and she was being interviewed, and they said, so, you know, what has motivated you to do all of the work? And she said, well, you know, I grew up in a very underprivileged environment, and I have this vision of making the world a better place, so that when other people experience that sort of disadvantage, that they have the opportunity to improve. And it's that vision that's guided me forward. And then later in the interview, he said, well, you know, you struggled with your weight, and it's gone up and down over the years. And what do you think that's about? And why is it that you've had such a problem with your weight? And she said, well, the problem is I just don't want to have a fat tush, was the expression that she used. And so what she was doing was moving away from being overweight rather than towards a different vision of herself. And my sense is that the Ethics Centre report has given us some really interesting information and some great recommendations about what we need to move away from. And so that's a really valuable contribution. But the real work is, what's the vision that we want to move towards? And I see that these workshops that we're coming up with as the beginning of a process of really determining what's the vision, what do we want to be, what are we going to move towards? Because I think there's still a job of work to be really clear about that. And so I'm really excited about, we've already got over 100 people who are participating, and I'm hoping we get 5 times that participating in the workshops, because I think you all both are absolutely entitled and welcome, but also have a responsibility to contribute towards what's the vision for how we want to be. How do we want to be as an organization? How can we be a good place for good men? And so that's the real key. And so at the workshops, there will be, the majority of the time will be opportunities for you all to talk with each other and have conversations about how do we want to see things, how do we want Freemasons to be in the future. So I'm excited about that. I encourage you all to come along. And I know some of you are coming to more than one, and that's absolutely fine as well. Yeah, I think it's an extraordinary opportunity, potentially once in a lifetime, and maybe even once in more than one generation, opportunity to really start to determine what the vision for Freemasons Victoria is for the next, maybe 100 years, as Richard said. So thank you so much for the opportunity to chat with you today. I really look forward to meeting more of you and seeing you at the workshops, and us all working together to create a vision for Freemasons for the future, Freemasons Victoria for the future.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Can you give the audience an assurance that attendees like myself will not be dominating proceedings? In fact, we'll be there listening.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the process that we'll use, for those of you who might be interested or aware, is called World Cafe. And one of the reasons I've decided to use that is because it makes sure that every voice in the room is heard, and no one gets the chance to grandstand and to dominate the proceedings. So every voice is going to be heard. And so it's a very respectful process, lots of fun, fairly intimate. And so absolutely, Richard, the idea is, despite your grand rank, for you to be just one of the gang for this for these workshops.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Just remind us, when are these workshops on?
Yeah, sure. So they're starting. The first one's on the 8th of February, and then that's the Saturday, I think. And then there's the one on the following Tuesday is the Zoom. Following Thursday is in the evening is face-to-face, and then there's another one on the on Zoom. I've forgotten the actual dates, but they're in Ash's newsletter every week. So you just need to look at the newsletter, and the dates are really clear, and how you can register, participate.
Thank you, Stephen. That almost brings our proceedings to a close. However, there's one brother I'd like to formally recognise. And he's made an enormous contribution to Freemasons in Victoria, and I dare say Australia in the last 10 months. We're now extremely well informed about what's going on. We've taken a number of initiatives, such as having a debate, publishing Zoom meetings. I mean, where would we have been? Where would we have been unless we knew which 2 or 3 Zoom meetings to go to today? So, thank you, Brother Ash, for all you've done as the leader of the Marketing Communications Volunteer Action Team, and personally for your support and advice and your skill in communications planning. Really, initiatives such as this don't just happen. They usually emerge from the fertile mind of Brother Ash Long. So thank you very much. I think perhaps we should give a round of applause to Ash for the wonderful work that he's done in keeping us all we've learned an awful lot doing this. Of course, Australia Day causes us to reflect on lots of things, actually. In my case, I had no say in being in Australia. My parents wanted to immigrate to South Africa, as a matter of fact. However, I think it was £100 to go to South Africa and £10 to come to Australia. And my grandfather would come to the Latrobe Valley first to work in SEC undertakings. So that's where my parents came. And then when I was about 3 years old, we went back to Scotland. Mother was homesick. And then we re-immigrated to Australia. And so, you know, it was a deliberate choice, really, of my parents to come here. You know, many of us have been in many parts of the world. You know, I think I've visited 100 and something countries, particularly in the Americas. And I say this with the utmost sincerity. When you get off that plane at Tullamarine, you almost want to kiss the ground, because you know you're back in the best country in the world. And you say, well, it might be fun to go to Las Vegas or go on a cruise somewhere. It's okay, but would you want to live in most of the countries of the world? Certainly not. I'll propose a toast to Australia after I thank the key participants tonight. I work with Brother Wayne Smith, who offers our prayer of thanks. Very well done, Wayne.
Pleasure, Grandmaster. Thank you.
Very worshipful Brother David Waugh, who spoke about what a candidate of 51 might expect the Freemasonry. Right, young guys, Brother Jake Berthelot, who has challenged us all to think about tolerance, diversity, and principles. And Professor Stephen Duns, who is helping process doesn't belong to me, or the members of the governing council, or Grand Lodge, and for the Australia Day Awards honorees, which Would you please charge your glasses or your can or your bottle or whatever liquid container you have.
Toast now.
I could have a glass of water.
I propose the toast to Australia.
To Australia.
Australia.
Australia to the recipients.
Oh, yeah.
Australia.
Oops. Where else in the world would you get that?
Probably in India.
Yeah.
Anybody got any questions for any of our speakers, either Stephen or Jake? I had a chat message saying, "Where'd you find him?" Or David, any questions? Any of our speakers tonight?
Yes, sir. If I may.
Please.
You want a hand now, Rob?
I'm sorry.
Sorry? You wanted to get that form filled out tonight.
Bob, man, ask your question.
I'm not getting through. I'm not coming up.
Robert, we're hearing you fine.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I will go. Most Worshipful Grand Master, one question, it's a continuation of what we are going through.
I'm sure.
And I believe as we move forward, should Australia, Freemasons Australia, be looking to form something like the German system of the United Grand Lodges of Australia. The Germans are the United Grand Lodges of Germany. They have the separate Grand Lodges in their old states. We have separate Grand Lodges in our own country, here in Australia, in our own states. Should Freemasonry Victoria be looking to form the Grand Lodges of Australia?
Unmute yourself.
You're muted, Richard.
You wouldn't expect me to make a policy minister over the air, Robert. Thanks for the question. A very sensible one, actually. And I don't think it starts by opening. I don't think it starts from open conversation with Grand Masters about let's form a Grand Lodge of Australia. I think it's pretty obvious when our numbers are down to 4,500 in Queensland, just under 8,000 in Victoria, under 1,000 in Tasmania, 1,700 in South Australia, and about high 3,000. Shouldn't be we should be cooperating. I think this is a personal view. There are all sorts of opportunities for sharing service amongst. I think that's what may well be. Now, rather than having the same similar communication device, similar apparatus and committees, we're all looking at the same sets of membership stats, and we're not that different in culture between states that there are common solutions to problems. So I think we've got to start working together as states more effectively before we move to the suggestion that you brought forward tonight. I actually have on the agenda for the next Grand Masters meeting, which I understand will be in April, those sorts of considerations about finding avenues for cooperation. In the same way, we've been in Victoria looking at avenues for cooperation between the craft, the mark, and the chapel. Great question. Pretty obvious answer.
Thank you, Grandmaster. Before I just let you go on that, What I'm advocating, of course, sir, is not a Grand Lodge of Australia,
No.
but a united body, which is the Grand Lodges plural of Australia.
Yep, I
Which
understand.
allows us to be, we are Australians, we love us or leave us, Freemasons or not, we have interstate rivalries, it's part of our nation, and it will, I'm sure, go on when we are no longer with us. Which is why I say, certainly I don't think we'd ever should try to go for a Grand Lodge of Australia, but Grand Lodges of Australia, so we do have a total body, then breaking down to the individual Grand Lodges.
Yep, in the same way, I guess, Baymark, it coordinates some of the activities of Chapter Mark and Royal Oak Mariner.
Yeah, that's all I wanted to say, sir.
Thank you. Anyone else ask any questions?
Not so much a question, Grandmaster, but I'd like to say a little bit about the mentoring program. It's a very interesting tool to get to know how to talk to people, especially your peers in Freemasonry. I'd recommend the program to everyone.
Yes, I know Paul Brennan's with us tonight. I understand, Paul, that's been very successful. Can you just remind us how many brethren have actually now been either trained or in the process of being trained as mentors?
The mentor trainers is now up in the 600s, most Worship Grandmaster. So that's an average of 2 per lodge or more within the whole of the state. So it's really taking on very strongly at the moment.
Anyone else?
Yeah, can you hear me? Am I coming through?
Yes, Mervyn.
Yes, Mervyn.
Thank you, Grandmaster. Being a foreigner, having come from New Zealand on a 2-year working holiday 47 years ago, I probably have a little different eye on things here in Australia. And what I see, and I'd like Jake to comment or just even take note of it. I have a talk to him later. This country has 2 flags, and both flags have a great deal of symbolism, history, and meaning. But we will not become one nation until we have one flag. That is just a personal opinion of mine, and I thought this was the appropriate time to say something. Thank you for a good night, Grandmaster.
Thank you. Great, and the place come from. How many of the Maori community members of Freemasons? A large price.
At least.
Jake, would you like to comment on any of that?
Sorry?
Would you like to comment on any of the Mervyn said?
No.
Okay.
I think Jake's here at the moment, Worship Master.
Grandmaster, I couldn't but fail to comment. We only have one national flag.
Okay.
Yeah, but it doesn't suit everybody.
Well, that's the national flag. That's what the nation has chosen. Until the nation chooses otherwise, that's our national flag.
Yeah, but Wayne, that's my whole point. Until that changes and we just have one flag, there won't be one nation.
Well, we have one flag.
Maybe we're getting off. Maybe we're getting too political.
Thanks, brethren.
Yeah, maybe. Yep. Oh,
we may have the Aboriginal flag and the Australian flag, and they both fly together proudly. And I would respect both flags as a nation.
Most Worshipful Grand Master, I might put a bit in here, in support of young Jake. Many years ago in my youth, my family grew up with an Aboriginal family. And we were friends for many, many years until we parted company and went over the different states. But one of my greatest pleasures was actually meeting Pastor Doug Nichols, a complete and utter gentleman. And he had views on the way things were going to come out in Australia in the future. And I've got to say, he was pretty well spot on. Now, I'm going back 60 years when he was, or 50 to 60 years when he was saying this. And I've never had a problem with him. Never. I treat him with the same respect. I talk to him in the streets. Probably it's because I grew up with a family. I don't know. But I'll just read one thing here, which was actually put on Facebook by Chris 182. We are meant to build each other together, not tear each other apart. And that's what Freemasonry is all about. And that if we can get that in the country, we're going to be laughing. I'll leave it at that.
Evan, where are you calling from? Now, are you calling from up in the hills at Omeo, or are you calling from Bairnsdale or Lakes Entrance?
I'm calling from Lakes Entrance, Grandmaster, because that's where I live.
I know.
Actually, tonight I'm not in the highest lodge in the land. I'm actually in Lakes Entrance.
Okay. Any further questions? Anybody like to talk about anything, or are we all done? Are we all
done?
Long done?
Grandmaster, coming from the United Kingdom, England in particular, can I thank you very much from the bottom of my heart for the fraternal welcome from you all and the pleasure of being able to celebrate Australia Day with you. And I do very much thank Brother Ash for his sending of the information which goes around our province as well for people to pick up if they want to. And I thank you all, and I wish you, I have to move on to another meeting, but keep well, keep Freemasonry going, and hopefully I'll get to see some of you at some point when COVID's gone and we come over to Australia.
Thank you.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks, Brother Roger.
Yeah. Thank you.
Grandmaster, could I pop in here and thank you for sponsoring tonight's Australia Day evening meeting. We had the quite unprecedented factor of having more people than we thought we'd be able to hold, more than 100 people. I think at its best we had 111 people once we found out how to increase the size of the capacity. So thank you for this initiative. Thank you to all brethren for the great support that you've given this initiative. And I think it's now going to be firmly on our calendar. And I think it's a wonderful thing that everyone's been able to get together on the evening of Australia Day.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ash. Took me 3/4 of an hour to log on.
Because you live in Dandenong.
Oh, is that what it is?
And that's by their rights.
And I'm connected to the NBN.
Oh, it is another good reason.
Well, it should be called the NBG.
What, with you connected with Telstra, are you, John?
Yes, I'm with Telstra, yes.
Oh, you poor thing.
Well, I'm very grateful to very worshipful brother Paul Brennan, who was coaching me through on the mobile phone at the same time we're having our meeting. He showed me the way, and of course, as you would expect, Zoom wanted more money to be put in the slot, so we were able to do that, and instantly we were able to exceed the 100 participants. Not in our wildest dreams did we think that would be over 100. We have recorded the proceedings tonight, so we'll be able to make it available to brethren who weren't able to get in the front door.
Well, thank you.
Thanks again, Ash.
Thanks, Ash.
Thanks, Ash.
Bye-bye. Good
night.
night.
John, great to see you.
All right, everybody.
Thanks, Ash.
All right, all.
Good night.
Bye, everyone. Good night.
Good night. Good night.
Nice being with you all, brethren. Stay well.